Hello everyone! Today we are celebrating International Women's Day, and our invitee in DevelopmentAid studio is Nighina Azizov, who is Program Coordinator on the Elimination of Violence Against Women at UN Women Moldova. Nighina, hello, and thank you for being with us.
Hi, and thank you for inviting me to your studio.
Nighina, Moldova is a country with deeply rooted stereotypes about the roles of women in society and in their families. For instance, reports say that 63% of Moldovan women experienced either psychological, physical, or sexual violence from their husband or partner at least once in their lifetime. According to a study on the perception of men and gender equality, 41% of Moldovan men consider that there are moments when a woman deserves to be beaten, while another 27% consider that a woman should tolerate violence in order to preserve the family. Surprisingly, on the other side, we have 22% of women who agree that either a partner or a husband is justified in beating his partner or wife under certain circumstances. Your mission at UN Women Moldova as a program coordinator on the elimination of violence against women is definitely not an easy one. From your previous and current experience, what are the main challenges in combating violence against women and domestic violence in Moldova?
Unfortunately, this statistic it's right, and Moldova is not an exception because everywhere we have situations of violence, and unfortunately this violence is happening more with women and children. Of course, people who are working in development field have no easy mission, and our team is the same. We are the team who are promoting gender equality in Moldova, and we are supporting government, civil society organizations, academia, and other important partners and stakeholders to promote gender equality. And one of the key priority area is ending violence against women and girls in Moldova. And the main challenges that are linked to the elimination of violence against women still remains, as you mentioned, persistent patriarchal stereotypes, social norms, and behaviors that are in one way violent, and these behaviors are based on the relationships that are between women and men, and it's much more about the power, it's about the education and how women are perceived in our societies. Another challenge is related as well to the legislative framework. Despite the progresses that were made in the Republic of Moldova on this field, and here I can mention about the law on eliminating violence against women and domestic violence, as well as about the strategy on eliminating violence against women and domestic violence, which was adopted and entered into force in 2018. So it's a comprehensive and systemic document that creates this framework for more sustainable approaches on eliminating this phenomenon in Moldova. And what we are doing as development partners and as organizations and individuals, we are supporting government, civil society to make things happen in this field. And what I would like to mention, this strategy was co-created, including with support of women survivors of violence, which from our point of view is very important, because they know how they pass through these services, what were the challenges when they enter in these services, what works when they entered in and asking and seeking for these services, what doesn't work, what are the improvements. And another challenge that I see as well is the fact that not all the services are in place, unfortunately. And not all the people who are involved in this process are not aware about the phenomenon. And here I also would like to reiterate once again about stereotypes and social norms and the way how women and men, boys and girls are educated in this society.
I see. Nighina, previous to UN Women, with the support of the European Endowment for Democracy, you have individually implemented a listening tour project called the Voices of Moldovan Women. And you have managed to meet with different groups of women from across the country. Basically, you took the road to learn about what women from all over Moldova had to say, and consequently, you wanted to create an accurate profile of the Moldovan woman, of her needs and of her struggles. And one of the topics discussed during this listening tour was the different forms of violence these women were confronting. What have you learned from these women? What have they learned from this experience together with you, and what was the impact of this project?
Thank you so much for asking about this project, because it's somehow a project that is very close to my heart. Prior to joining UN Women, I indeed developed a listening tour project in all around the country, and the main scope of this listening tour was to listen women. To listen about their needs, to listen about their challenges, which issues they are facing, being women at local level, but as well to listen their solutions. And what I've learned from these women, that they are very powerful, they are very inspiring, and for me it was surprisingly it was a surprise when at the beginning they didn't want to share their experiences, they didn't want to speak about their issues and challenges. And when we started this very open communication about my issues, how I feel as a woman in this society, they identified themselves with my interests, with my issues, and they started to speak. So one thing that was very important as an outcome of this activity was to hear frankly their needs and their issues. The second one, I heard their solutions, how they see the solutions at local level. We experienced different types of communication during this listening tour, and we had different categories of women, and we had women from underrepresented groups. We had women who already overcome the violence. We had women who were and are very successful at local level as businesswomen, as mayors, as teachers, and as development and agents of change. And what I also learned from them is that their optimism is very high, and they really want to make changes at local level and to create more better places to live at local level, and more conditions for their families as well for the community. And regarding the women who faced in the past or who are facing violence, it's every time hard to hear such stories. And the one important thing was that through this project they were encouraged to speak up, but also to seek for services. And in some communities where we had these discussions, the mayors organized local clubs or local initiative groups and invited experts and psychologists and people who are working in this field to speak with these women, to offer some counseling services. And this, I think, it's a very important change in even in their understanding of the phenomenon, because in a lot of cases women don't report violence because they fear about stigma, they don't feel confident, they don't trust services that are available at local or regional level. So they have a lot of issues concerning their personal feelings and beliefs. As well, there are still myths around violence, that violence is a private issue, so no one have to be involved in this process, which is not true. It's a social matter, so everyone has to report and everyone has to be involved if these cases are occurring.
Indeed, speaking of the services, the main services which the victims of violence against women and domestic violence reach out for are either health services, social or legal services. The report on costing of domestic violence and violence against women in Moldova showed that up until 2016, NGOs provided most of the specialized assistance to women and children affected by domestic violence. These NGOs relied heavily on the support of donors. How is UN Women helping the Moldovan government to get more involved and provide the much needed services to the victims, though?
One of our priorities is to work with the government and to support government in different and through different ways. And of course, it's a very complex relationship and communication. And we, through our partners from civil society organizations, through our experts, national and international, are supporting government to have different visions about how the services can be developed, what are the best practices in the region or at the international level. So through these interventions we support government to have and to adapt their laws, policies and codes based on best practices. This is one thing. Another thing is that also through representatives from civil society organizations, we support government to improve the legislation. So now we are working on improving the legislation regarding the procurement and accreditation of social services. We have a very good cooperation with ministry in this field. So this is a very important partnership, and we support government through civil society organizations to revisit the legislation regarding elimination of violence against women, to align the legislation to international standards and norms. You know that Moldova signed, the government of the Republic of Moldova signed the Istanbul Convention, and this was a very important step that was taken in this regard. And which is also important is that legislation to be aligned, to be human-centered oriented, and to be oriented towards the needs of the women who are affected by violence.
Nighina, according to reports to this day, as you mentioned, domestic violence is still underreported due to reasons such as people consider that it's a private matter and victims do not identify themselves as such. When analyzing data prior to 2017, the response mechanism to violence against women and domestic violence focused more on mitigation and less on prevention. From your knowledge, what has been done so far to shift the Moldovan government's focus from mitigation to prevention? of violence against women and domestic violence?
As I know, in the EVAW strategy that was recently adopted in 2018, as I mentioned before, there is a huge part of interventions and actions regarding prevention measures. So what is very important to understand is that we have to focus our attention not only on persecution or working on integration of the gender equality principles, but as well on prevention, because we have to understand and to educate society and educate us as well entirely on how not to enter in a violence relationship. It's very important to educate girls and boys in the same spirit, the spirit of equal rights, the spirit of the fact that everyone has dignity, everyone has the right to access services in equal way, and of course we have to educate kids and educate ourselves to listen and to respect each other. In our work we are doing a lot of prevention programs, and what I loved in this activity is that we are working with youth. So one of our partners is doing a lot of prevention work in schools, and what we are doing during these discussions with youth about gender equality, gender stereotypes, about social norms, about the roles of men and women in the society, and how everything is connected and interconnected. We are hearing different opinions, different views, that women are inferior, that women shall not drive a car and they cannot do it at all. And this is not because these boys or people who sharing these opinions are bad. This is because sometimes they don't understand or they don't know that everyone has the same rights. And of course this is also related to their education, because you know that in many families boys are educated in one way, girls in another way. So that's why women are discriminated when they entered into job market, when they are looking for jobs, and we have statistics when women are less paid than men for the same job or for the same amount of hours spent at workplace. And for us it's very important to discuss all these things with youth, to put them in these people's shoes, to understand better and to internalize these things. And another important thing is that young people are eager to know about these issues, and they somehow are impressed that we are speaking about these issues, because before that they even didn't discuss or didn't think that women and men are discriminated somehow. And after the discussions, these youth are creating different media tools, and this is we are thinking an innovative way to approach gender equality and to educate people differently.
Nighina, currently UN Women Moldova is in its first year of implementing its strategic note for 2018-2022. One of the impact areas of this strategic note is violence against women and girls. What are the objectives concerning violence against women and domestic violence in the strategic note, and what are the main challenges in attaining them?
Indeed, the Moldova country office adopted its new strategic plan for 4 years, and we started the implementation of the strategic note in 2018. So the main objectives and the main outcome that we want to achieve is to for all women and girls to live a life free of violence. And based on what we want to achieve, we have three main priority areas. And one of these priority area is to have better legislation on EVAW, to have better protocols and different legal framework to have better coordinated response on cases of EVAW, and this is the priority related to the legislation, to policy. Another impact area which we also want and we are covering now is to work and to change and challenge social norms and stereotypes, which I think it's very challenging as process, as and as approaches. And of course, we also want for women and girls to know better their rights, to know a lot and much more about the available services that are at local and regional and national level, and for them to be aware and to understand better what to do and how to act in cases of violence. So these are three main priority areas. As well, we are working with media, and what we are doing with media is very interesting, and for me it's very inspiring. Because we are working with women survivors of violence, or women who were discriminated based on different criteria, and it's about ethnicity, it's about the disability, it's about the fact that they are HIV, or they are we are speaking different languages, and which is it's very common, these types of discrimination. So these women participated in a co-creation discussions, and after that they will appear in media and they will share their messages, which are inspiring and positive messages. And the main focus on this is to change perceptions and behaviors about women who passed through this violence, as well as women who pass through discrimination, and to show that they are not victims. They are women who wants to live a life free of violence, who wants to have access to services, and who wants to live with dignity in this country.
What other projects does UN Women implement, particularly at this moment, that are targeted at combating the stereotypes that exist in Moldova?
We have a very nice cooperation with a local NGO from Comrade, and with this NGO we have a very interesting approach in combating violence against women and girls through social theater. So what we are doing is to present this social theater at regional level. As well, we had our premiere in Chisinau. We also have different innovative approaches when are speaking about ending violence against women and girls. And what we started to apply, it's the positive deviance concept. It's about the fact that some people at local level or in small communities are acting differently. so differently in the way they see the solutions, and they start to implement the solutions, even if they have some issues or problems. And based on this concept, we identified police officers who are reporting violence better or more often. We have found social assistants who started to act and behave differently when it comes to cases of domestic violence. And of course, we identified women, survivors of violence, who started to speak up. Even it was very challenging and it was difficult for them to speak up at local level and at national level about this issue, and to encourage other women not to report and not to be silent. And these women in our approaches are known as positive champions, women who are supporting other women to speak, and they now are in the process of creation of peer-to-peer support groups. And this is really very important for us. And I want also to mention that the easy read version of selected articles regarding the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women also was co-created with participation of women with different backgrounds from underrepresented groups, and they were the main participants and agents who propose the structure of this easy read, how they see this easy read, and this is very important for us to invite and to discuss with these women, because they are solution holders and they know better how to overcome some issues or some problems in their lives.
Nighina, as the program coordinator for the elimination of violence against women, what are the priorities on your agenda for 2019 and for the following years?
We have a lot of work to do in this respective field, and our main priorities are to support continuously government of the Republic of Moldova to align its legislation to international norms and standards, to support the civil society organization, and through the civil society organization to support women who are affected by violence, as well as to take part in this process of changing mindsets, of changing social norms, and to make people to think equal, to build smart, and to innovate for change, because this is the thematic of our 8 March day this year. And other priorities that we have, of course, is to work with youth, because it's very important work on preventive work, and as well to co-create this intersectoral response on cases of domestic violence and violence against women, and to help local NGOs to build as well their capacities, and to support women, and to support girls not to enter in a violent relationship, but also to have integrated services and much more access to the available services, and to feel the support from the local administration, as well as from local NGOs, and as well as from the society at all.
Nighina, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.